And as time keeps passing, what's becoming more and more clear is that Martell Holt isn't just fighting with Melody, he's fighting with himself. Every moment of silence from her feels like rejection, but in reality, it's reflection. Melody has simply reached a stage where she no longer needs to respond. She's not avoiding him to be cruel, she's choosing peace because she finally understands her worth. There's power in not reacting. There's freedom in walking away from things that no longer serve your spirit. And Melody has mastered both. Martell, on the other hand, hasn't yet learned that kind of emotional discipline. He's still caught in a cycle of proving, defending, and reacting. Every time Melody posts a success, he feels the need to remind the world that he's doing fine too. Every time she moves silently, he fills the silence with noise. It's like watching someone who can't sit still with themselves, because silence forces truth to rise, and truth can be uncomfortable when you haven't faced your pain. The sad part is, Martell's story could have been different. He had everything: love, family, fame, and opportunity. But pride can make even the best people self-destruct. Instead of reflecting and learning from what went wrong, he kept trying to rebuild an image rather than rebuild himself. You can change your surroundings, your relationships, your career, but if you don't change your mindset, the same problems follow you everywhere. That's exactly what happened to Martell. His issues didn't start with Melody, and they didn't end when she left. They were always within him. And that's what makes his story so relatable. Because how many of us have held on to something long after it was over? Not because we still loved it, but because we didn't know who we were without it. That's what Martell is facing right now. He's not just missing Melody, he's missing the version of himself that existed when she loved him, when she believed in him, when she helped him feel like he was enough. Losing that kind of validation can make a person spiral, especially when their ego is louder than their healing. When you really look at it, this isn't just a story about a man and his ex-wife. It's a story about identity, about what happens when someone builds their sense of worth around how others see them and then suddenly loses that reflection. Martell's struggle is internal. He's been trying to replace Melody with distractions, relationships, appearances, public attention, but none of it fills the emptiness, because emptiness doesn't go away when you fill it with noise. It only fades when you face it with truth. And the truth is, Martell hasn't forgiven himself yet. Not for the mistakes, not for the pain he caused, and not for the way he let his pride destroy something pure. Forgiveness isn't about saying "I'm sorry" to someone else. It's about being honest enough to admit what you did and still choosing to grow from it. That's what healing looks like. But healing takes humility, and humility is something Martell still struggles with. Every defensive comment, every attempt to rewrite the past, it all comes from that place of pride that's trying to protect him from accountability. Melody, meanwhile, doesn't need to prove anything anymore. She's doing what real healing looks like, moving forward quietly, building her future, loving her children, and protecting her peace. That's why people gravitate toward her. She's not pretending to be perfect. She's just showing what it looks like to choose yourself after being broken. Every win she gets now feels genuine because it's rooted in growth, not revenge. And that's the difference between evolving and reacting. Over the years, we've seen Martell try to explain his side of things. We've seen interviews, social media posts, and reality TV moments where he's tried to convince people that he's misunderstood. But the truth is, people don't listen to words as much as they watch behavior. And Martell's behavior often tells a different story than his words. You can't say you've changed while still acting from the same pain. Change isn't just about doing things differently. It's about thinking differently. It's about making peace with your past so that it doesn't control your present. Every time Martell takes a step forward, something reminds him of what he lost, and he slips right back into old habits. That's the hardest part about healing. It's not linear. You can be doing fine one day and triggered the next. But the key is to not let those moments define you. Melody's strength isn't that she never hurts anymore, it's that she no longer lets the hurt run her life. She feels it, accepts it, and moves on. That's emotional maturity, and it's something Martell still has to develop. Let's also be real. Love doesn't just disappear. When two people share years of history, children, and dreams, the emotional connection doesn't just vanish overnight. But there's a difference between loving someone and being emotionally dependent on them. Martell's love for Melody turned into attachment, and that's why he can't move on. True love wants what's best for someone, even if it's not with you. Attachment wants to control someone because you fear losing your identity without them. And that's exactly the space Martell has been stuck in. What's interesting is how the public has become part of their healing story too. Fans have opinions, blogs have narratives, and social media often turns their pain into entertainment. But behind all the headlines, there are two real people still learning how to coexist as co-parents. That's not easy, especially when emotions are still raw and egos are still in play. Every decision, every post, every interview, it's like walking on a tightrope. One wrong move and it becomes another public debate. Melody's silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. She's learned that not every battle needs a response, and not every wound needs to be reopened for the world to see. Martell could learn a lot from that silence, because silence teaches you to listen, not to others, but to yourself. It shows you what still hurts, what still triggers you, and what still needs healing. Until Martell learns to sit with his silence instead of filling it with reactions, he'll keep repeating the same emotional cycle, feeling misunderstood, getting defensive, and pushing people away. When you strip away the fame, the cameras, and the noise, what's left are two people who once loved each other deeply, but grew in opposite directions. Melody grew through her pain, Martell ran from his. And that's why they're in such different emotional spaces now. You can't move forward while holding on to the version of yourself that caused the pain. Growth means letting go, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. People often say, time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time only heals what you face. What you ignore, time just buries deeper. And Martell has buried so much under pride and denial that now it's overflowing into every area of his life. Until he faces that truth head on, he'll keep finding temporary fixes that don't last. Even the way he interacts with Melody now shows that inner conflict. There's tension in his tone, frustration in his body language, and confusion in his actions. He wants peace, but he doesn't know how to exist without chaos. Because for so long, conflict was his comfort zone. When peace feels unfamiliar, it's easy to mistake it for boredom. That's why Martell keeps creating drama, not because he enjoys it, but because it's the only way he still feels connected to the past he refuses to release. The beautiful thing about Melody's journey is how she's showing women everywhere that peace is possible after pain. She's proof that you can walk away from something that broke you and still rebuild stronger than before. Her success isn't just material, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's knowing that the best kind of revenge is happiness that doesn't require validation. As for Martell, there's still hope. Growth is always possible. Change is always an option, but it starts with honesty. The moment he admits that the real battle isn't with Melody, but with his own reflection, that's the moment healing begins. Until then, every relationship he tries to build will carry the same cracks, because you can't build something new on top of old wounds. In the end, Martell's biggest enemy was never Melody. It was his pride, his denial, and his refusal to look in the mirror and say, I was wrong and I need to change. That's what growth requires, accountability. And accountability is what sets healing apart from repeating. Melody chose healing. Martell keeps choosing history. But life keeps giving him the same lessons until he finally learns them. So as we continue to watch their story unfold, maybe it's not about taking sides anymore. Maybe it's about understanding that both are human. Both made mistakes, both loved deeply, and both are still figuring out how to move forward. The difference is one chose peace while the other still chooses pride. And until pride steps aside, peace will always feel out of reach. Maybe one day Martell will realize that Melody wasn't his downfall. She was his mirror. She showed him who he was and who he could have been. And when he finally accepts that, he'll stop fighting her and start healing himself. Because at the end of the day, the greatest battle is always the one we fight within.